Welcome back to another episode of Lost in the Farmer's Market Garden Life, where today we're talking about this lovely specimen here. Now, I just got this one this week, like literally Friday before I filmed this, and I went on a mission. A mission. Yes. So, its scientific name is Lauris nobilis, and its specific variety is Little Ragu, which sounds vaguely like an insult of some sort. Hey, Little Ragu, get on my garden, you facha brute! But anyway, its common name is Sweet Bay, and you may recognize the name from the bottled spices you buy at the store. Sweet Bay is usually sold in the spice aisle either as whole dried leaves or ground up. It is a common component in various Italian Mediterranean dishes and seasonings. And, it's actually really versatile. But let's cover it. Its family is in Lauraceae, or the laurel family, and it is a true laurel. Actually, that's one of its names, believe it or not. It has a lot of common names, and I did joke in the strawberry video about a certain plant having a lot of common names, and we will get to that. Its non-cultivar variety is originally native to the Mediterranean region. The company that hybridized this is called Monrovia. If you know anything about gardening, you know who they are, and no, they did not pay me to advertise this. I'm going to tell you a story about sweet bays, and what I've done to grow the darn things over the years. I don't know if it's funny, but it's probably entertaining. Anyway, let's cover the hard details. So, it is hardy in USDA zones 8 through 11, and according to Monrovia, it is hardy to 10 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit. It's in a pot, so I will not have to deal with that for the first few years at least. I'm going to bring it in every winter because bay leaves, fresh. Compared to dried, the fresh are so much better. Plus, you can eat them and not have to worry about internal problems. Its pH range is 6 to 7. Its exposure is partial to full sun. Its height can be 6 to 8 feet or 6 to 8 feet in width. These are all straight off the tag that came with the plant. Now, before you ask, this is not the pot it came in. It actually came in a much smaller pot. I want to say it's about a half-gallon pot, maybe. I'm not precisely sure what size that is. But anyway, it came in a smaller pot, and I immediately moved it up here. Because it's spring, this plant is alive and growing, and it needs the root space. Plus, look at all this glorious branching. Do you know how hard this is to get? Usually. And this is... I'm going to stop for a moment and just gripe about the plant industry. When it comes to bay laurels, usually what you get is a singular stick with some leaves on it. That might be about as tall as this part here, maybe a little shorter. And then they have the audacity to charge you something to the tune of 10 to 20 bucks for that. What a ripoff. I know bay is slow growing. In fact, it's up there with rosemary for being slow growing. But come on. Now, this one, grown by Monrovia, has excellent branching on the side, down below, everywhere. And it's doing just fine. And it came like this. And you know what it cost me? With taxes, about $12. I mean, I didn't question it at the line, but I thought maybe they put the wrong price on. But normally to get a mature and decent-sized sweet bay, you're looking at coughing up $30 to $50. They are not cheap. They are the exact opposite of cheap. You can't say the word cheap around the darn things. It's like whalefin sansevieria, which have now been moved into another family, and I'm not doing that here. But anyway, it's expensive. It gets expensive real quick. But what you get is worth it. Because as I said, fresh bay leaves are so much better than the dried ones. They are so much more versatile, and there's so much more flavor that you have to use less of them, or you overdo it. Cooking is indeed an art, and having the right spices is critical. It's like, if you want to paint a masterpiece, you can't have crappy paint, now can you? You can't have a warped canvas, now can you? I mean, I suppose you could, but it won't be as good as it could have been. Having the right seasonings is very important. Now, I want to point something out. Sweet bay has a bunch of other common names, like bay tree, bay laurel, true laurel, Grecian laurel, laurel, and then if you go by the spice rack names, sometimes it's called bay seasoning, quote unquote, which they usually stick other stuff in then, or sweet bay, or, bay leaf. So it's got a bunch of names. Now, Culturally speaking, in Greek, this plant's called Daphne, and that relates to a story of Apollo. Apollo had the hots for this priestess named Daphne. Unfortunately for him, she wanted none of his shenanigans. Because, I mean, the Greek gods were notorious for falling in love and then pining after someone and chasing and blah, blah, blah. Especially you, Zeus. Anyway, so what ended up happening is she begged another goddess, and I can't remember if it was Athena or Artemis or one of the others, to save her from his attentions. So, as Apollo closed in, she was teleported away and a sweet bae was put in her place. Apollo was heartbroken and started wearing wreaths of sweet bae to console his loss. Not bad. Typical Greek tragedy, except not really a tragedy, just the unrequited love situation. Now, in Roman culture, they also loved the sweet bae. In fact, there were two phrases that spawned from the sweet bae, and one of them was to rest on your laurels, which meant sweet bae, and then the other one was to take up the laurel. I mean, amazing. In Roman culture, the sweet bae is a sign of victory, and from its name, the position poet laureate comes around. Laureate itself is it's derived from laurel. It means you are the best of what you're doing. Not exactly arete, but you get the point. So there's that. Now, I've already told you about the trials and tribulations of getting a bae, what it costs. Now, let me tell you a brief story of bay leaves and disaster. Because I've been trying to get a bay tree in my garden for years. As I said, they're not cheap, and that's a problem. Now, Monrovia rolled up in here with their $12 plant and made it, and it's a compact version, and I'm happy with it. Let's see how it turns out. There will be an update video later. But I already had a bay tree on my premises. Excuse me. A bay, and it was out along the driveway. And it was a little one. I coughed up like $15 for it, or $20 in two or 3 years ago. And it was doing well, and then finally last year it finally settled and had a proper growth spurt. It shot up like 8 inches in 1 year, which is great. It's fantastic. And then I switched internet and phone services, and the contractors installing the box snapped the entire top off the plant. I didn't know until they were gone, because I went out to drop fertilizer on that patch of garden at the time, and I looked and I said, well, I can't repeat what I said, but I was not happy. But I thought, okay, let's take the top off. We'll clear the area. It's got some leaves on the base. Maybe it'll come back. My faith was not rewarded. It didn't come back, and a year later, I want to say, yeah, that was in 2022, and here we are a year later, and I see no signs of it returning. I see plenty of those crappy cherry laurels that nobody likes, but not that. So I went on an epic journey to nurseries to look for a good bay tree, sweet bay, that wouldn't break the bank. Now that was more difficult than I cared to imagine. The big box stores don't have it because they don't know what it is, because they don't train their crews on anything. I'm looking at you, Blows and Home Despot. Yeah, you. So I had to go all the way out of town to a nursery that was 50 miles out of town. And I knew they'd have herbs. I was just hoping they'd have a sweet bay at a reasonable price. And sure enough, ta-da! This is what I found. Now, this, as I said before, is grown by Monrovia. Monrovia is one of the big producers in the nursery industry. They produce a lot of specialized plants for sale for whatever you want. And, they're very good, but they are kind of pricey. This one wasn't pricey. It was the right size. It was perfect. And here it is, and you get to see it. If you see Monrovia Little Ragu, I recommend you snap it up while you can, because once word gets out, these suckers going to be gone. I mean, think about that. Sweet bay you can bring into your living room as a house plant for a couple of years. Oh, yes. So, why should you have... Let's go back to the nuts and bolts real quick. Why should you have a sweet bay in your garden? Well, first and foremost, the fresh leaves are much tastier than the dried ones. Also, chopped up fresh leaves from a sweet bay do not have any risk of damaging your gut and your stomach and intestine like the dried ones do. Typically, when you put whole bay leaves in, you have to remove them before eating because of that risk. Ground up bay leaf just tastes different. And here's my tip for you. Fresh green bay leaves cooked in with oven roasted turkey drums is friggin' amazing. I'm just saying. You might not like turkey normally, but the bay leaves totally sell it. Maybe you throw in a little bit of cumin, perhaps some thyme. Heck, if you've got it, sage. It becomes a aromatic herbal feast. It's amazing. So, I'm going to leave you with that thought. If you've ever grown bay leaves, do you have any thought about growing sweet bay? Please leave it in the comments. If you have any thoughts about Monrovia's products, also in the comments. If you like this video, hit like. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Everything helps. The Forge blog is going. And as always, folks, keep them growing. Thanks for watching.